Matrix, we are back with calculus again. Another question extracted, which is question number 8. Basically, this is a question that most of you could get marks from it, but you need to focus so to not do mistakes in it. And many books and many other teachers will teach you differently. You must create your own strategy to master this thing and get it right. Now, this question 8 is a straightforward question. Now, look at this. They are saying to you, they've given you an equation. Let's say it's 8.1. What is the equation? Is f of x equals 2x squared plus 4. Now, they said determine the derivative of f of x equals to 2x squared plus 4 from first principle. To my surprise, some people can't even copy it properly from the formula sheet, but which is provided and given. You just have to remember that there's a limit involved there and you must try to look at it thoroughly. So let's first write that formula down before we do anything. The formula is written as the first derivative of f. It's equals to the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x, all divided by 2. Divide by h, sorry. All divided by h. That is your formula from a formula sheet. You just have to go back or in front wherever you find it, and then you recopy it and put it there so that you can be able to follow. Now, what makes most of us get it incorrectly then is to try and take the information, put it directly in the given equation. Now, what you can try to do is, already you have f of x, which has to replace this one. Now, try to write your f of x plus h on the separate format and see if when you substitute, it's going to affect you. So what does this mean? X plus h means wherever you see x on the given equation, you are going to put x plus h. And our equation is f of x equals to 2x squared plus 4. So let's put x plus h whenever we see x. It's going to be 2 multiplied by x plus h squared. So it means you have 2 brackets that you must open and then plus 4. That is 2. Let's remove the brackets. It's x multiplied by x give us x squared, and x times h will give us xh, another xh, and h times h will give us h squared. Don't forget this plus 4 there that we have to write. And now let's first look at the like terms. Inside the bracket we have x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 4. And multiply everything now by 2 to remove the bracket. So we have 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared plus 4. Now, folks, this is your f of x plus h. You remember your f of x is 2x squared plus 4. Now you have to go back to your equation and substitute this f of x plus h inside. Remember, your equation must go with the first principle equals to the limit as h approaches 0. You do not leave the limit until you substitute the h being 0. So then you have to substitute. Remember we said f of x plus h, it's now 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus 4. But there's a minus in between on the formula. So you must put that minus. And then in bracket, you can put the f of x, which is 2x squared plus 4. And then you divide the whole thing by h. In this way, I believe it's a little bit straightforward and one can follow in what it is that you are trying to do as a learner. Now let's remove the bracket. You have 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared plus 4 minus 2x squared minus 4, all divided by h. Let's now look at the like terms. 2x squared and minus 2x squared, they'll give us 0. A 4 and minus 4 will also give us 0. Then we remain with a limit as h approaches 0 of 4xh plus 2h squared. Divide by h. Folks, we cannot divide by a 0 because we'll get undefined solution. So it means we have to do what? To take out the common factor of h so that we can deal with the denominator. Still, as long as we are still writing h, it means we have to keep the limit going with us. So this h will remain with 4x plus 2h and divide by h. Can you now see that the h can cancel each other and now we'll have a 1. In that case, it means we have the limit as h approaches 0 of 4x plus 2h. Now here, you can substitute your h by 0, and that's where you will stop writing the limit. The moment you substitute the 0, the limit is not necessary. Okay, matrix, let's continue with this question 8. We have seen that the first principle is straightforward. You can get it right as soon as you start understanding the strategy that you need to use. I mean, if it's simple for you to work on it inside, then substitute directly so you save time. But if it complicates your life, then separate it. Why rush if you can get 5 marks and save some other problems that you can reach? Now let's go to 8.2. We are still dealing with calculus. In 8.2, there are still differentiation. And here, in this differentiated thing, you need to remember the main strategy of the derivatives. 8.2.1, they say differentiate, and they give you a statement or the equation. F of x is equal to negative 3x squared plus 5 multiplied by the square root of x. Folks, the square root of x, you cannot derive it. What you need to do is to change it to have x to the exponent 1 over 2 before you can start deriving. So let's do that. We have negative 3x squared plus 5. We can rewrite the square root of x as x to the power 1 divided by 2. And from there you can derive simpler. And when we start deriving, the moment you start to derive, you must put the prime, which represents the derivative. Okay, the first derivative. Now this is negative 3 times 2 will give us a negative 6x. And then 5 multiplied by 1 over 2 will give us 5 over 2. 5 divided by 2, x to the power negative 1 over 2. Because you have 1 over 2 minus 1. That's why you get a negative. Okay, if you can, or if they ask you to write it with a positive exponent, which is, in this case, it was not asked, you can go on and write and fix this. In other words, you're going to put your x at the denominator, and you have 2x to the power 1 over 2, or you can rewrite it as 5 divided by 2 to the square root of x, and you will get your 3 marks. What is nice about this is that each and everything that you are doing have mark. In other words, when you change the square root to x to the power 1 divided by 2, you get a mark, and when you derive an individual term, you get each mark. Okay, so you need not to be lazy and stop doing when you feel like you don't understand. Try something and something might come up. Okay, in this one we are given p of x, it's equals to 1 divided by x cubed plus 4x all squared. That is the statement given to us. Folks, you do not know how to derive without having a statement with an individual term. In other words, you cannot use any other method in your syllabus. Now, what you need to do here is to remove the bracket. So let's move it to this direction a little bit so we can have a space. When we remove the bracket, we say 1 divided by x cubed plus 4x, and then we open 2 brackets because of the square. That is the only reason we are opening 2 brackets. Then multiply out to remove the bracket. We are going to have a 1 divided by x to the exponent 6, and we are going to have, if we multiply out, we are going to have 8 divided by, let's see, so we are saying 1 divided by x cubed, multiplied by 1 divided by x cubed, it gives us 1 divided by x to the 6. And when you say 1x to the 3 multiplied by, so that's what, let's write it here, is 1 to x to the 3 times 4x. This thing will happen twice, so you can do it again. It means that you will have plus, let's write it down here, 1 over x cubed multiplied by 4x. And the last one is where we have a 4x multiplied by a 4x, where we'll get a 16x squared. So we need to try and work that out. This is going to be equal to 1 divided by x to the 6, and this one will be a 4 divided by x squared, because the x to the power 3 and the x will cancel, one of the x's in the denominator, so we have only 1, and the 4x squared plus the 16x squared. Now after that, we need to look at it, or we need to take the denominators up to the numerators because of the x. You see, we cannot factorize, or we cannot derive them when the x's are on the denominator. So this is our key. We must take them up. How do we take them? We are using the exponential way. So we have to have x to the negative 6 plus x to the negative 2 plus x to the negative 2 minus 16x squared. Now we can derive. Remember, this was p of x, so this is p with a prime. When we start deriving, we put a prime. So this is going to be a negative 6x to the power negative 7. And we have a minus 2x to the power minus 3. And a minus 2x to the power minus 3. And we have minus 32x. I guess that's what you should have written. Okay, if we look at it in a proper way again, we will have a negative 6. If they say you must write it in an positive exponent, a negative 6x to the power 7. And these two are like terms, so it means that you have a negative 4 in a way. So that is going to be a negative 4 divided by x to the exponent 3. And we have a negative 32x. Folks, that's how you could have done it. And this one have 4 marks, because they knew that you will have to remove the bracket first and then simplify, work it out until you get to the solution. And I guess this is how this question was supposed to be done. Okay, let's check. Okay, there's 4 here and there's 4 there, because this 4 must go down. And also here, so this will be now 8, and that will be 8, for which this makes it as 16. So it is a negative 6 divided by x to the 7 in a positive way, and minus 16 divided by x cubed, and minus 32x. And that is the solution, which is 4 marks. It needs a little bit of a practice for you to get it properly. If you don't practice it, it's going to be at least difficult for you to get it right. Okay, and that is the end of this question. Okay, matrix, we are continuing with the calculus, for which now we're going to go and look again on the graphs. So now the graph has been drawn for you, and it means you have to try and find solutions from it. And this is question 8 again, but it was extracted from question 8.3 of one of the previous question papers, because I wanted you to realize another way of working with the graphs. Now the information given to us is that the sketch below shows the graph of h of x equals x cubed minus 7x squared plus 14x minus 8. the x coordinate of point A, so that is point A, is 1. So already you know that your A coordinates, it's going to be 1 and 0. Is another x-intercept of H. So that is one of the x-intercepts. If you look at the graph, there is 3 of the x-intercept there. They just given you only 1. And they say to you, determine the first derivative of H. It means that you have to recopy the equation given to you so that if you make mistakes, one can see where the mistake had occurred. So it's h of x equals x cubed minus 7x squared plus 14x minus 8. Remember, when we start deriving, we must put a prime to say that we are now deriving. And when we derive, we multiply the coefficient and the exponent. So it's 1 times 3. Then will give you 3x squared. And we have minus 14x plus 14. That is 1 mark because you just had to derive for which was direct and straight. Okay. In 8.3.2, what they wanted you to do there is to determine the x coordinate of the turning point at B. Folks, remember, to find the turning point, you have to put your first derivative as 0. So you're going to take the first derivative and let it to be 0 because that is your gradient. At a turning point, the gradient is always equals to 0. So let's solve for x then. 3x squared minus 14x plus 14, it's equals to 0. Now we need to look at it and see how are we going to factorize it. Remember, at the end of the day, we have to get the 14 as the last number and the other one in the between. So if we say, let's see, 14 can be done by 2 ways, either by 7 and 2 and also by, it can be done by 7 and 2 and also by 14 and 1. I think that's the 2 things that can do 14. So if we factorize this part, if we can, it will be between 7 and 2. If you say 3 multiplied by 7 gives you 41, 21, and minus 2, it gives you anything more, 19. So rather you can use the quadratic formula if you can see what to do and how to do it. Or because this is now where you are supposed to look for the x point at the turning point. So let's see if we use a quadratic formula. X equals a negative 14 plus minus the square root of a negative 14 squared minus 4 times 3 times a positive 14. Okay, all divide by 2, multiply by 3. So that is how you can find your point. So let's quickly do this in the calculator and see if we can get to the solution. So this is negative minus 14. We can use either one, plus the square root of a negative 14 squared minus 4 times 3 times 14. And divide this by 2 times 3. Let's see what we are getting. It's for the positive one, x will be equals to 7 plus the square root of 7 over 3, and which is approximately 3,22. So that is the decimal fraction one. And you can use the negative. Let's use the negative and see what we are getting. If we say minus, we're gonna get, or x equals 7 minus the square root of 7 over 3. So it's plus or minus the same solution, which is about 1.45. That is your turning point. Now, remember the question wanted you to find the x coordinate at your turning point at what? B. Now, this is where B is. B is the smallest number, and the other turning point is between B and C, which is this one. So it means to get this one, you must figure out which one is small between the 7 plus and the 7 minus. And you figured that that is going to be 1 45, which is the minus 1. So it means that the x coordinate of B, it's going to be x, it's equal to 7 minus the square root of 7 over 3. That is 3 marks, folks. You can get it and you can move on. Okay, and that is the second question for that part. Okay, let's look at the last question of this one. It's 8.3.3. Now, can you see that if you are given a graph, you must analyze it thoroughly, because the marks are just given like that. If they say something and you do something else, you will lose marks. In this case, you must focus and try to do what the question is asking. Here they say, calculate the coordinate of C. C is one of the x-intercept. Already here, you are given one x-intercept. There's many ways of doing this. I mean, you can go back and do the long division, do the inspection, or you can go and do the synthesis method, or you can go straight and say, no, man, the equation for this was supposed to be y. It's equal to, and a is to x minus the first root, x minus the second root, and x minus the third root. This is what I don't know. Okay. Now, but by looking at this, you can see that your value of a has already been given as 1, so you don't have to bother yourself. And at point A, you already have x as 1. So it means you can say you have x minus 1. Now, what you don't know, it is the x that you are going to find where? The one that you are going to find at second root and the third root, which is C. So you need to try and figure that out. Remember, this is now going to be a quadratic part. And if this is what is missing, then it means you have to use a quadratic way of writing it. Let's do that. This is 1 is to x minus 1. For quadratic, remember, I would have ax squared plus bx plus c. That is my quadratic concept. So let's write it. This is ax squared plus bx plus c. That's what I'm looking for. But if you look at the equation here, you are given a negative 8 being c. So it means that being d for the h of x. It means that for you to get the d, you must multiply the c with the negative 1 to get a negative 8. Okay, so you look at this and that, you will get the negative 8. So let's write this one. Is x minus 1 stays like that. And here you will have a number such that when you multiply it with negative 1, it will give you negative 8. And that number will be a positive 8. Okay. A is 1 as it's given here. So whatever you have here, you must multiply these two such that you'll get a 1. So this is just going to be x squared. Now what is missing here, it is the value of b. If we look at it, what is missing is going to be the value of b. Folks, look at this. This value of b corresponds with something that you can look at. If you look at it properly, when you multiply this out, you will end up with a number that can assist you. Let's see. If I say x multiplied by x squared, I will get x cubed from h of x. If I say x multiplied by bx, I was supposed to have bx squared. Okay, and if I say a negative 1 multiplied by bx, I will have just bx. But if I say negative 1 times x squared, I'll have a negative x squared. Can you see that? Now you go back to your h of x, that will relate with a negative 7x squared. So it means that bx squared plus x squared is actually must be equals to 7x squared. That's how we go to the solution. Then you're going to take out the common factor of x squared. You remain with b minus a 1, which will be equals to what? 7x squared. In actual fact, that means that b minus 1 is equals to 7. Therefore, b will be equals to an 8. Now you know that here you will have an 8. Okay, so from there, you need to factorize to get to the other part. You need to factorize your 8 there. And to factorize this part, you can simply say To factorize the one that is in the bracket, you can simply say x plus 4, is it x plus 4 times x plus 4? Okay, let's double check what is there that need to be done. So if ax squared plus bx plus c, these ones will give us -8, and when we multiply x with b, we have bx squared, a -1, and x will have a -x squared, supposed to give us a -7x squared. So that negative is very important, which we have left out. You have to write that so that you'll give us a negative what? A -6. Now the -6 is the one that must be here. In other words, your value of b is a -6. If a value of b is -6, to factorize it, it means we have two numbers that when we multiply, we will get an 8, but when we add, we will get a 6. That's what it means. So it means that from here, we can have now x minus 1, and then we'll have x minus 4, and x minus 2 will be now be equals to 0. These are our interceptions using this method, though there's other method that you can use to get to the solution. In other words, now x is equals to 1, or x is equals to 4, or x is equals to 2. Looking at our graph, this makes sense because all of this one are on the positive side of x. Now the question was saying we must calculate the coordinate of c. That means that the coordinates of c, therefore, will be determined by the last number, which is now what? F4. Okay, let's write it there properly. So coordinate of c, the coordinate of c will be F4 and 0. That is what is the coordinate of c. Okay, folks, this is how you should focusedly do this, and try by all means to use whatever method suits you best, whichever method can work, and get it right. Even if it means you have to go back and factorize everything, including the number one, the first one that you were given, which is 1. Okay, and that is the end of question 8, and that graph is analyzed like that. Thank you.